The new Netflix series, The Witcher Blood Origin, is a true masterpiece, and in this video we will highlight the main points as to why that is. We all loved Rings of Power, but The Witcher Blood Origin is still on another level. Everything in the series is perfect. The story itself, the great deep characters, the incredibly good acting performances. Warning, spoilers ahead. Thanks for tuning in. The story begins with a female elf with about 30 units of Botox injected into her forehead region, telling a story to Jaskier the Bard, and she wants him to write it down. And she wants him to do it outside on a rock while it's snowing. Couldn't they have gone into a hut or something like that? But no, all logic aside, being outside is a much cooler shot. Ink and paper are apparently also waterproof, so no problem. Throughout the series, the elf will comment regularly from the background, and that will be her only job, by the way. It goes something like this. Characters will discuss something or decide something, for example, "We are now going to Centraia." And her background voice will say 2 seconds later, "And now they're going to Centraia." Which is extremely helpful and absolutely not unnecessary, because we, the audience, may have forgotten for some reason, or simply did not understand it the first time because we're not as smart as the showrunners. Either way, the story of the Seven is told and how the conjunction of the spheres came about. The story starts at a remote place by the sea, with the character of Ayla introduced, also called the Lark. A once great warrior who now wanders around as a bard and charms the people with her smooth and gentle voice.
A flower shall grow where our peasant blood flows. The lives they have taken are the seeds they have sown.
Okay, well in this example she just didn't hit the high notes too well, but that happens. She probably hits them every time when we are not listening. Overall, her role as a wandering bard who sleeps wherever she can is generally pretty convincing. And it's just great how bards at that time manage to freshen up every morning and apply makeup to their face after a rough night. In a tavern, Ayla saves a young girl from a group of men by immediately beating them all up in a fist fight. She seems pretty cool and relaxed about it, demonstrating to us that it's business as usual for her. The men are chased away and Ayla is celebrated like a folk hero. However, there's a small problem with the scene. Won't the young girl be vulnerable again when Ayla, as traveling bard, leaves the next day? Won't the girl then be completely defenseless against the injured, offended, and therefore even more angry group of men? Was it really the best way to resolve the conflict to beat them all up? Or wouldn't it have been better to resolve things with words? Or, harsh as it sounds, to kill them all or otherwise incapacitate them permanently? But no, if the show tells us the matter is resolved, then it is. Why asking all these questions? Because honestly, who really cares about the girl? The point is to show us that Ayla is a strong warrior. Is that so hard to understand? Another storyline is opened, the most intelligent in the entire series. It takes us to the city of Centraia, where the king is trying to end the 1,000-year war that his country is fighting with other countries by marrying his sister, the Princess Mervyn, off to a king from a previously hostile kingdom. He's doing this because that's the way how peace and alliances were made in the Middle Ages. Not because he's evil or cruel, but because he wants what's best for his people. And because, as previously mentioned, the story takes place in sort of medieval times, when people just thought that way about making peace. But there was one thing he hadn't reckoned with, and this was the attitude of his sister Mervyn. Because Mervyn is different from other people/elves. She doesn't accept why she should marry any guy just for peace. Why should she make such sacrifices, and thereby save the lives of thousands of soldiers and civilians? No, she's actually a strong person who bows to nothing and nobody. So what does she do? She makes a deal with the chief mage of the court, who provides her with a magical beast. With the help of the beast, she slaughters her brother, this peace-loving weakling, who was actually always depicted as nice and sensitive in the series, and all the other rulers of the countries at enmity, and crowns herself queen of all the countries of the continent. What a great idea, and of course all the people are happy now. But still some questions arise. Wasn't it explained to us before that the common folk is suffering from hunger and therefore is unhappy with the royal family? And isn't the new queen also a member of this very royal family? And hasn't her little coup d'etat actually worsened things for the commoners rather than improving them due to the additional unrests? And if one thinks a little further about the other countries over which the queen, unlawfully, has self-proclaimed herself ruler, what kind of people in a foreign country would accept that their own kings are murdered and then simply bow to some foreign queen? Especially the aristocracy of these countries. Shouldn't those countries have something like legitimate heirs to the throne or something, who would fight for their rights? Isn't the whole plan of the princess/queen a little short-sighted? Yeah, maybe. But you forget that the queen is a woman, and so the people are happy because they now finally have the chance to show their progressive thinking to the world. Who really cares about trivialities such as hunger or succession to the throne? Before Mervyn came to power as queen, by the way, she had sex with one of her bodyguards, a guy named Fjarl. I just wanted to mention it because Fjarl will be somewhat important later in the series. The relationship between the two will not be of any importance whatsoever later in the show. But with a meaningless, lukewarm sex scene, we as an audience are always hooked. The showrunners are just so clever. They know which buttons to push to satisfy the masses. Right? So Fjarl ends up in the same remote village as Ayla, the Lark, Bard / strong warrior, and they both end up in the same prison. Small world, right? In any case, in prison they learn about the Queen's coup and her seizure of power, and they also learn that the families were killed in the process. Fjarl, who is generally a little slow on the uptake, cannot believe at first because he slept with the Queen for a few minutes and that is proof enough that he knows her. But luckily Ayla can bring him to his senses and they realize that they can get further together than alone. So they reluctantly join forces after initial pissing matches over who is the coolest and strongest of them, and set off to overthrow the Queen and avenge the families. On their way back to the capital, they meet a bunch of people. None of them really has an important role in the story, but they are all extremely important in order to bring as much diversity to the show as humanly possible. Michelle Yeoh, who does everything that Ayla could have done, if the writers had wanted to give Ayla a little more character. A limping mage and her male mage friend, a female dwarf, and a dude no one really knows where he came from or why he's even in the story. In any case, it doesn't seem at all like these characters were only coming with the protagonists so boxes can be ticked. Roughly, we learn no more than 3 sentences about each of these characters. We learn that the limping mage and the dude are a couple. Important to the story? No, not at all. We learn that the dwarf had a relationship with another female dwarf, and this other dwarf was attacked and killed by a gang of man-elves. Important to the story? No, not at all. But at least it's certainly told in an exciting, gripping way with flashbacks and stuff, right? No, not really. All the characters really do is just talk. They talk and tell a lot. Even though I always thought that film was a visual medium, and one of the most important rules while writing screenplays is to tell a story with pictures rather than just talking about stuff. In other words, that the rule of show don't tell is an important one. I really thought that's how to keep a story gripping. But what do I know? But it certainly doesn't add any speed to an already rather slow story that half of episode 3 takes place on one single evening, during which the characters are only talking and playing music together. Oh yes, I love the music in Blood Origin.
Beneath that stone a warrior, they said he had a heart of stone.
At some point the showrunners seem to remember again that they were supposed to tell the origin story of the Witchers, and therefore a love story develops between Ayla and Fjarl, who until then had always seemed to be ready to stab each other in the back. But more about that later. In the meantime, Queen Mervyn in the capital is pursuing her brilliant plans. With the help of her main mage, she wants to open portals to new worlds and start civilizing them to gain more resources. But doesn't she know exactly how dangerous it is to open portals into new worlds, and that any kind of monster could come out of it? And how does she know that there is even food in these other worlds that can be safely consumed by her people? Such an expedition could take years actually, but it seems very much as though she expects immediate results. But if she would really only have the best interests for her people in mind, as the show wants us to believe, wouldn't it be faster, much less dangerous and more effective to plant more fields or harvest more? For example, with the help of the remaining mages in the countries? But she doesn't let anyone tell her anything or let anyone show her any boundaries because she's now free and can do whatever she wants. It sounds a little like she's a heartless, ego-driven psychopath, right? She's willing to sacrifice the lives of her subjects for her crazy plans. Yes, but the series wants us to believe that she's basically a misunderstood heroine. That she became what she became because she was oppressed her whole life. The real villain in the story is actually the main mage, who does not accept her on the throne, wants to get rid of her and become king himself. Why he doesn't pursue his goals immediately, even though he's in the possession of his monster that slaughtered a gathering of heavily armed men and women at the beginning of the series in just a few moments, is not quite clear. In any case, at some point in episode 3, the main mage's goal is not only just to become king anymore, but to become a god. He wants to do this by the help of an energy being in one of the other worlds, but the queen doesn't know about this yet. Unknowingly, she sends the mage and about 8 soldiers through the monolithic portal to this exact world. How she plans for her 8 soldiers to explore and civilize other worlds, as she told us before, is not quite clear. But one thing is important to her.
Locate food sources above all else.
F it. But it doesn't even come to that, because as soon as they are in the new world, the evil mage quickly gets rid of the soldiers. In addition, he has to sacrifice someone important to him to the powerful energy being in order to have his wishes fulfilled and become a god. He chooses to sacrifice his mute chambermaid. A heart-wrenching moment. In theory, if the chambermaid had been given a bit more character, instead of just being mute, and a bit more screen time than roughly 50 seconds in the entire series. But it doesn't matter. You can tick another box on the inclusivity checklist, and that's the most important thing. Well, in any case, the mage then returns as a god to the elven world, ready for the final showdown, so to speak. Because the group of the 7 challengers in the woods knows that they have to fight the mage and his monster, Fiyal allows himself to be turned into a monster as well by the 2 good mages. He becomes kind of a Hulk with black eyes, a witcher, and he can only be calmed down by the soft voice of the woman he loves passionately. But didn't they just sleep with each other once before? Yes, but the show tells us that they suddenly love each other passionately, so that's what's up. And they love each other again, unprotected if you know what I mean. Then they all go back to the city and fight the queen and the bad mage by sparking off a revolt of the 15 people who apparently only live in the city. Haha, even in the Rings of Power show, editors at least had the decency to Photoshop a few more people into such scenes. Interestingly, the evil mage, who is supposed to be a god by now, is pretty quickly defeated by one of the good mages, but not before an energy beam is shot into the sky, opening portals to other worlds and bringing about the conjunction. The queen dies because she stabbed Baela, Fiyal dies because he stabbed Baela. Another heart-wrenching scene. In one of the final scenes, we see that Ayla is already pregnant with a Witcher baby, and she sings one of her beautiful songs again, and everyone is happy. This show is just great, and it joins in with all the productions in 2022 that are so progressive that they bring all of humanity a step further to enlightenment. We learn that characters are basically not responsible for their actions if they had previously been wronged. The Queen, for example, for whom we as an audience should feel compassion and sympathy, although she's a murderous psychopath, because she had been oppressed her whole life. Or Ayla, who used to burn people alive as a warrior, and now seriously thinks that because she now travels the continent, singing and entertaining people, all her deeds are forgiven and forgotten.
I remembered burning a family alive in the name of my king. I thought sharing my music could fix what I did.
We learn that showrunners don't even have to make the effort to tell a story in pictures if they can just have characters talk about it. Saves resources too. We learn that Lenny Henry, who played a Hereford in the Rings of Power, that was so memorable that I forgot his name, returns to The Witcher Blood Origin because he obviously really appreciates good fantasy productions. Who needs Henry Cavill as Witcher? Who needs someone who knows the source material of books and computer games inside out, who understands exactly what the author of the books wanted to tell, and who wants to respect that? Henry Cavill, who apparently doesn't prioritize identity politics, but rather wants to tell a good, coherent story that touches the audience.
Apparently on set, you know more than anyone else.
Yes. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. So do you correct people?
I am effusive about getting the being loyal to the source material. Let's put it that way.
Regardless of what fans say, regardless of whether they love the source material, the books and games, and regardless of whether for them it was Henry Cavill as Geralt the Witcher who made the Witcher series in general really worth seeing. It's good that Henry Cavill will not be a part of the Witcher main series after season 3, because the times have changed anyway, and you should just deal with it, okay? And as The Witcher Blood Origin shows, a great series can also be created if you don't have such a party pooper around reminding you of the source material all the time. And you give the showrunners complete freedom to tell a story they really want to tell.
Leave her pissed in peace. Nothing worse than being rushed.
Because why should fans primarily get what they want? People don't watch films and TV shows just for fun, right? If you like this completely unironic video, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, you could be interested in this video about Rings of Power, a show that is nearly as good as The Witcher Blood Origin. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.